Hello and welcome to Differential Discussions. I'm Melissa,
And I'm Dave.
and we're back to look at another peripheral blood smear. This one has some platelet satellitism.
Pretty rare thing to see too, in my experience. But still like a good thing to kind of talk about.
Yep.
It's probably more of our niche disorders that you can encounter. So what is platelet satellitism? What's your elevator pitch about what it is?
Well, it's when the platelets will satellite a neutrophil like a satellite circulates Earth.
Yep. So if we look at these neutrophils in the field here, we see these platelets just kind of ringing around the outside, and some of them in bigger aggregates than others. Um, Pretty neat. So, as far as physiological causes, I think this is still kind of being, um, you know, figured out, researched.
Yeah.
Some indication that it might be immune mediated. It also could be kind of adhesion proteins, and so it could be a couple of different things kind of going on in this, but again, a pretty rare finding, but significant, right? So, um, morphologically, this is really, really neat. Um, I think we care most about what it does to the CBC, right? So if I have platelets sticking to my white cells, that means they're not going to be counted correctly. So this could present like a thrombocytopenia, and that's why platelet estimates and looking at the edges of the smear are so important for us to kind of spot these things. And I think I recall once seeing this clinically where it was so pronounced that there were huge clumps of white cells and platelets. And in that case, so good luck finding this in any SOP. I would love if someone could leave a comment if you have something in your SOP addressing platelet satellitism. I would love to know about that. But uh, this is so it should be kind of brought to lab director manager, and because a white count is unreliable and the platelet count is clearly going to be unreliable as well. So yeah, um, clinically, I'm not sure how important this is, but it definitely is technically important to interpreting the CBC.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll depend on the level of satellitism too, on how impacted the white cells are going to be, but the platelets definitely will be decreased.
Yeah.
And it is definitely something that we will give as a qualitative finding that platelet satellitism is there. Then the question becomes, how are you going to report out a platelet? Are you going to not report out a platelet at all?
Mm. Mm.
How are you going to report out the white cell count?
So if you were, so I anoint you lab director of our imaginary lab, how do you think you would handle it?
I, I don't think you can report out a platelet. I think it would have to be unable to report. And I think the white cell will depend on the severity of the satellitism.
Mm, yeah, probably for many. This is totally just speculation. I would assume most platelet satellitisms, the white count's probably relatively unaffected.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
unless it's that giant clump that you were saying earlier
yeah,
and that other one. But for the most part, if you're dealing with something like this, to notice how we're in more of a thinner area, there's some gaps. So
mm,
really, yeah, we'll scan around so that everyone can see, but in the thicker areas, there's not a whole lot, or the normal areas, I guess. There's not a whole lot of cells, and then there's not a whole lot of satelliting. So if
mm,
you don't actually look in the feathered edge, you can easily report this out as someone having a thrombocytopenia when it's not.
yep. So when the analyzer asks you to confirm the platelet, there's a lot of good reasons to grab that slide and look at the flat sides, the flat edges there, the borders, and on the feather. Look for things like this, even if it's just platelet clumps generally, right? That's still um, very important part of the any procedure
Yeah,
for
platelet
reviewing.
clumps love to hide in the thinner areas.
Definitely. Yep.
All right,
So
let me move around a little bit so folks can see.
sure. So yeah, if I was a magical lab director, I would agree with you as well. And maybe even perhaps like a comment that you could kind of put out for the clinician to correlate. Oh, how beautiful. Hey, really neat too. That eosinophil does not appear to have any platelets stuck to it.
Yeah.
Just a note. Yeah.
Well, if that's telling us the eosinophil must not share the same receptor on the neutrophils that is
Yeah.
impacted.
Yeah, that's it would be a somewhat reasonable conclusion, especially if the finding was kind of repeated, right? But just interesting to note. It also looks like a lot of the platelets are degranulated too. And not that that's not particularly relevant, but
Yeah.
just
No,
something interesting.
it does. Some of them kind of look like gray blobs circulating the neutrophils, but those are all platelets.
Mhm. So yeah, I could see saying unable to report a platelet, perhaps giving some kind of a comment for the clinician to correlate, right? So if someone has a true thrombocytopenia, they should have clinical symptoms associated with that. So really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you can,
lots of gray blob, right?
yes, lots of gray blobs. You can really see that here.
Yep.
This one, these actually a little bit more granular over here to easier to see, but it's like in this area that it's harder.
Yeah. Because that just looks like a big mass right there, probably platelets, right? Oh,
Yep.
pretty cool. I also would caution against, so sometimes qualitative platelet morphologies will be reported. So like you might report agranular platelets. I feel like these platelets are agranular because they're being activated more than there's they're not functional.
Well, I think I'd want to base that decision based off of platelets I see around the smear rather than the ones I see around the neutrophil.
Very good. That's true. Well, and then yeah,
Because
I can
all
see.
of these platelets here that you can see are granular.
Yeah, that seems to be true. Yeah, it's a good point though.
This one's hypogranular.
Yeah, there's a couple hypogranular. Yeah, I wonder.
A couple of schistocytes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mildly reactive looking lymph there. Uh,
I wonder if we're building a case for this might be an immune reason.
I know. Definitely reinforces the narrative of an autoimmune.
Yeah, some of these, like, look here, some of them are,
Agranular. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they might be being activated in circulation, or there could be something um,
Or
wrong.
after our discussion with Kelly,
Ah,
maybe the platelets aren't the, I mean, the granules aren't being marched into the platelet.
yes, yes. So that could actually be part of the protoplatelet formation and a problem there. I know that was such a wild interview. So, um, that's when did that released on the?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
released the that is released. So I will
yeah,
link to it so people
that's
can
awesome.
watch it
Yeah,
if they want to.
so yeah, we have a couple conversations with Kelly, and I highly encourage those. That was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, but see, we're not seeing a whole lot in the right area of the smear to see stuff.
Mm,
There's some lymphs, some red cell morph, but we haven't really seen a lot of neutrophils, a lot of platelets.
definitely schistocytes, though. I just saw a couple fields where there was
Yeah.
fair amount of. I wonder if there's a microangiopathic process that's associated with these platelets and what they're doing.
Well, there's not really a thrombocytopenia though.
True.
Hello, naked EO with no platelets around it.
Yeah. N of two. Hmm.
Hello,
Okay.
basophil with no platelets around it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a couple platelet. I can't tell. Hmm.
Well, there's a platelet. Where is he? Here. But
Hmm.
this just looks like the stain washing out of the granules.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah. So basophils um, tend to kind of bleed out the granules a little bit. They're water soluble.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypogranular platelets now that
Yeah. Now that we're really looking, yeah.
we're looking. There's a lot of them.
It's like a little bit of an ESO. So there's definitely like a few things going on here.
No platelets next to this baso.
Mm-hmm.
How interesting that we're just seeing monos, basos, EOs, lymphs here, but when we go out to the feathered area, that's where we're seeing the neutrophils.
Yes. So that brings into another question here, right? So when you go to do a differential, is that differential going to be accurate? And I would say probably not. So
Definitely going to be
sat yeah, so satellitism can present a lot of problems with this for the CBC. It could make the white count itself unreliable. It can make the differential unreliable, and certainly the platelet. So
so
a lot of considerations.
I'm moving back out towards that feathered edge.
Hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, and then there's the neutrophils, right? Yep.
And another EO without platelets.
Yeah. That end's creeping up. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, so they're out here. All the
Yeah.
all the neutrophils are out here.
Hmm. So this is an important thing to on the bench, right? And
Yeah.
again, I'm willing to bet that not too many hematology labs have this in their SOP.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you think about doing a diff, if you do a diff in like the thinner areas, you're typically going to have less lymphs and more neutrophils. And then the thicker you get, you generally have a little bit more lymphocytes. But it's like a slight variation. It's nothing that's like quite like this, where like you have all the neutrophils in the feathered edge and the rest of the cells on the inner. I mean, not even in the thicker areas. We were in the normal-ish areas to do your diff. So this is definitely a product of whatever is happening with this patient.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a good learning opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Maybe there should be something written in SOPs for platelet satellitism.
There
So
probably,
for our viewers, get to work.
if it's not in there, put it in there.
Put it in there.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for this one. So thanks for watching.
Thanks for your time.